Today, I want to talk to you about one of my favorite parts of Azure. If you're at all curious about what you can do with Azure Machine Learning Studio, stick around because this is the video for you. Hi, I'm Matt. I've been using Azure for the last decade, and I now teach software development professionally. On top of that, I'm a data science master student, and I love data science, and I love to spend my free time teaching others how much fun it is. I want to introduce you to Azure Machine Learning Studio and why I personally think that it makes machine learning so very accessible. Okay, so here we are in Azure Machine Learning Studio. You'll often hear Azure Machine Learning Studio referred to as AMLS, so if you see that term, that's what we're talking about. And we got a few major features going on here. So the top bar over here, we've got some notebooks, automated ML, and designer. And these are kind of the three major areas of the application for the four major types of people. So for people who are brand new to machine learning, you got automated ML, where Azure is going to basically take some parameters that you give it and sort of tweak out what it's doing. It's going to try to figure out an optimal type of approach for the machine learning scenario you're giving it. And it's going to come up with a good algorithm for you and the task that you're trying to achieve, even if you don't necessarily know what all these algorithms are or any of them are, which is really, really awesome. I love how they make it so accessible for anybody to get into data science if you understand the basic principles about features and labels and selections and things like that. And that's really what I'm all about on this channel. So super cool about automated ML. I'm going to have some more dedicated videos on that, so make sure to like and subscribe to see those in the future. A little step up is designer. So if you're familiar enough with the various phases you might go through for machine learning experiments, you can use the designer and sort of create your own experiments and tell it with a little bit more granular control what you want it to do. But you need to pick which algorithms you're going to be applying. You need to figure out how you're going to be splitting your data, things like that. You also have notebooks, and notebooks kind of serve two different types of people. So they help somebody who's looking for just kind of a cloud-based environment with Python or Jupyter Notebooks or something like that to be able to go in and just do some coding in the cloud, which is cool. But they also are good for if you are trying to use the Python SDK or R SDKs to connect to Azure. That can be a great way of working with that as well. So you can kind of look at notebooks as a code-heavy thing, automated ML is a no-code thing, and a designer is like a visual drag-and-drop designer. So they got really something for everybody. You also have information about your prior runs, your prior experiments that you've run, what compute resources you have. These are cloud-based computational resources that Azure is hosting for you. You have machine learning models that you've created and registered. These are usually auto-generated, as you can see from my auto ML names here, as well as the data sets you've registered for it. So as you can see here, I've been doing some experiments on whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie. So stay tuned for some future content of that nature. Azure has some opinions, it turns out. This is really cool stuff. Let's take a look in a little bit more detail. So let's start with automated ML. So automated ML lists all my prior ones. It has some nice help down here as well. But if I was to create a new automated ML run, I could either create a new data set, update like a CSV, or choose for one for Microsoft's open data sets. Really cool stuff. But I'm going to pick here just my latest Die Hard data set. And it asks me to select which experiment I want. So I'm going to choose my Die Hard Christmas experiment. What my target column is. I don't really have time in this video to explain what that is, but I will be doing a dedicated video on this particular topic, and so stay tuned for that. And then you're going to choose where you want it to run. So I have a low-end CPU running. It costs me 8 cents an hour for it, and I can stop it when I'm not using it. So we'll click Next. And now it's going to let me choose what type of machine learning task I want, whether I'm doing classification, regression, or time series forecasting. So if we're predicting whether something is or is not something, that's a classification task, and you can choose to enable this deep learning or not. You can choose regression to predict some sort of numerical value or whatever. You can also configure some additional settings and really get a little bit of customization to how the algorithm works. And then you can kind of just validate the settings and then all that. So I'm not actually going to start a new run here, but I just wanted to show you kind of what the user interface looks like, because it's super, super simple for somebody to go in and say, hey, here's what I'm trying to predict, here's what I'm trying to run, here's what I run it on, and then Azure just says, boom, go. I'm gonna run it, and you're going to wind up with a pretty cool result. So here's what one of those results might look like after it's completed. So this is a series of experiments, and you can kind of look at the metrics for each prior one. Don't really have enough time to go into metrics for this particular video, but you can kind of track the performance of various experiments over time in the same sort of an experiment. So if we were to take a look at this last one, this heroic wire one, it would give you a little bit more information about like the solution it came up with, how it's performing, how it's working well. If you deployed it to an endpoint, you know what the name of that is, and you can drill in and get more details on really any of these things. You can get more details about how it performs, as far as its metrics. It's super cool. It's super easy to just drill into this stuff and get more and more detailed information. And a lot of it will teach you more about data science just by seeing these charts that initially overwhelm you, and then doing a little bit of research or watching some tutorials like mine or others, and really getting a little bit more comfortable so you can understand what it's doing for you. Because the cool thing about AutoML is it's actually making a lot of these really cool decisions for you and flagging things that you need to be aware of, and then pushing you in good directions for help. And it'll tell you really why the model is doing what it's doing, why this is the best model that it's found. So here it's telling me, what are the important aspects of this particular model, and things like that. So again, a lot of stuff that we don't really have time for in this particular video, but this is a really deep rabbit hole, but it does a lot of really cool stuff for you. And I'm paying, 8 cents an hour while I have a machine active that I can just hit stop and turn off. Now, I'm paying a little bit more for things like storage, but storage is very, very cheap in the cloud. That is that's the automated ML portion of things. We also have the designer, which will let you create a run with using a little drag and drop interface. So here is a run that I had set up. I'm not sure I've run this one yet, but we have a data set, and then we are moving it into a normalization stage, and we are splitting the data into a training set and a testing or validation set. We're feeding in a 2-class decision forest algorithm in there, and then we're kind of evaluating how it did. And so I could submit this to Azure, and Azure's going to run this experiment as it can on whatever I told it to, and it's going to store the results of these things. But if I wanted to tweak this, if I wanted to change what algorithm I'm using, I can go expand my machine learning algorithms, and I can see a whole bunch of other ones and get a little bit of help on each one too, which is really cool. So you have to know a little bit more about what you're trying to do with Azure, but with your machine learning here, but you can do it in a very no-code or low-code environment. If you want to do code, you actually can drag in Python and R nodes here, just for it to be able to work with those here. So really good for kind of an intermediate level thing, or just somebody who doesn't want to write a lot of code and they know a lot more about things. So the designer is really awesome, and you get like the same sort of features you get at the end from our automated ML runs. We have notebooks, which are really just Jupyter Notebooks in the cloud. So I can take a look at my Jupyter experiments here, and I can take a look at really whatever I want to look at. So it looks like I've got actually an old Coursera assignment that I've done here that I have hosted in the cloud. So that's kind of cool. But you can kind of poke around with whatever you want to poke around with, and it's just cool. So other tabs we have here, we have datasets, where we can upload our own datasets. You can also drill into a dataset and get a little bit more details about that, the files there. You can profile the data, get a little bit more information about it. So yeah, datasets are cool. Pipelines are more for automated and repeatable pipeline runs. So if you have a set of steps that you're going to be doing every time you're doing a machine learning run, you can define them in pipelines. So here I had a couple of fail. I think I had some issues with Python dependencies here, and I haven't rerun them since, but those have since been resolved. We do have some endpoints that you can set up for your pipelines, and some draft stage pipelines as well, which is kind of cool. So this isn't just about training models. It's also about being able to deploy them so that other people can interact with them and monitor those deployed applications. So this is really a full studio for designing experiments, tracking those experiments, running them on cloud resources, and then deploying them so other people can work with them. And you deploy them really as endpoints. So I have a couple endpoints here. So Jolly Ocean, Amusing Turtle, these are randomly generated, and I'm always amused by the names that it comes up with. But it gives us a REST endpoint here, and we can actually go in and test that if we wanted to, which is cool. And it's got a Swagger file as well. So that's super, super cool. It gives us a link back to the model. This is running on a container instance that I actually have stopped right now, so that's why it's telling me it's unhealthy. So maybe I can't run that endpoint right now. What if it was running? I could. But this is really part of deploying a model. And if you have a model you really like and you really want to deploy it, I can go into my models, I can click on it, and I can just click deploy and choose where I want to deploy it. And then, yeah, it's just gone. And other people can interact with it. You know, that's a little bit more expensive than actually training these models, especially if you're doing real-time predictions versus batch predictions. But it's still pretty reasonable. All right. So manage, we have some compute resources. So I have my low-end CPU. That's the one that costs me, 8 cents an hour in my area. I can also click on here to just launch into its Jupyter Labs and Jupyter. I can run VS Code and RStudio. I got a command line terminal here. Really, I got my own little dedicated machine I can use. And this is really what compute instances are designed for. I'm really a hobbyist. I don't want to pay the networking costs that I might need for a compute cluster. So I tend to use a little bit more of the low-end stuff on compute instances because it meets my needs and budget. But for real-world use, you got your compute clusters and you got your inference clusters, which can scale up and down dynamically. You do pay for some overhead with network with those, so be sure to check the pricing calculator. You also have attached compute, which lets you actually integrate things with Databricks and HD Insights and stuff like that. So if you have other Azure resources you're using and you want to attach these and use these as computes outside of the Machine Learning Studio, you can do that here. But I'm just a guy playing around with data science for fun, so I don't necessarily have those things available to me in my budget. Environments are kind of just sort of these setup little configurations that Azure has for a particular image. And so you can say, hey, I need something that's going to have Python 3.7 and scikit-learn 0224. And that's an environment that they support. And so you can click on that and get more information. You can also create your own custom environments. I've not messed around with that yet, but you can kind of create these little profiles for whatever your needs are for machine learning, which is cool. Datastores, so you can kind of track your own data here. We've talked a little bit about that in other areas, but Machine Learning Studio really does help you manage all of your stuff. It helps you manage all of your data and all these other things. So you can use this to label images and things like that. I haven't done a whole lot with computer vision yet. I'm looking forward to doing more experiments in the future, but I've been mostly focused on traditional machine learning at the moment. And then link service will let you actually integrate with other things as well, which is really, really cool. So being able to integrate with a larger Azure is definitely part of the picture for Machine Learning Studio. Machine Learning Studio, I think, is very affordable, very reasonable, and very awesome because you can come in without any programming experience and you know how to structure your data and you know the basics of machine learning and what a classification run is versus a regression run, and you feed it to Azure Automated ML and you get a good result. Or you get a result and you tweak your inputs and you try again. You see, okay, well, maybe if I change my featurization settings or I give it a little bit more data or a larger sample set, and you kind of get to track the performance of your models over time, which is really, really cool. So I love Azure Machine Learning Studio. I love Microsoft's AI offerings. I'm really enjoying getting deeper into this stuff. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and that you play around with it yourself. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you really want to learn more about one aspect of this, please give me a comment. Let me know what you want me to talk about, and I would love to cover it for you. But happy coding and enjoy whatever you build.